Well, thank you very much, Elena. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here in Norway after 3 years of interruption and to be here in this marvelous place in Rosendal after 6 years. So, I cannot resist, but just after this coffee break, I hope everybody is happy. Anyway, so this is a joint work with my former PhD student Mahdi Jazim Hassan Al-Kaabi, who has now a position in Iraq, in Baghdad, and with 2 of the organizers of the present event. There's an archive version here you can refer to. So, before going into the subject, as a teaser, I'll speak about Gavrilov's K-map from the Russian mathematician Alexei Gavrilov from Novosibirsk. So, you start with a vector space on some field, maybe of characteristic 0 to be sure, and you look at the tensor algebra over this vector space. And you suppose that on that vector space, you have a bilinear product, triangle pointing to the right, and you suppose it's bilinear, but nothing more. It's not associative, it's not Lie, it's not whatever. It's not commutative. It's what we say, it's purely magmatic, just bilinear. Okay, and then from that, Gavrilov defines a linear map from T of V into itself recursively as follows. If you restrict to the words with 1 letters, it's the identity. And then you have this recursive formula. K of a word, it is the first letter tensor K of the tail of the word, if you want, minus some contraction terms like this, okay? Because here you apply K to a word or to some words of length n-1, okay? So manifestly you get a map which is a deformation of the identity. K of a word is the word itself plus some corrective terms which are contraction terms, which are words of length n-1, n-2, etc. And interestingly enough, you have an explicit non-recursive formula for the inverse, which goes like this. It's a sum over all the partitions of the set 1 up to n. All the partitions, including the crossing ones. What is this term indexed by pi, by the partition pi? It is a product, it is a word of length, the cardinal of the partition, I mean the number of blocks. And so what is YB? For a block B, YB, it is YB1, triangle YB2, etc., triangle YBL, if small l is the cardinality of your block, and the parentheses are set on the rightmost way.
Sorry, what is the definition of this triangle?
This triangle, it's just a bilinear map. Yeah, it's a bilinear from V cross V into V without any other property. So now I go into the subject. Sorry. What are the lowercase b's? I mean, in your partition, you take a block B1 up to B, okay, the number of blocks. You take any block inside. You call it big B, and inside big B, if you enumerate your elements of the big B, it's YB1 up to YBL. But there's an order, of course. I should have said B1 is smaller than B2, etc. And you order that way. Sorry?
They are the elements of
Yeah, they are the elements of B classified in increasing order. Yeah. Right. Okay, so now something else. I turn into differential geometry, and you start with C infinity manifold, and you look at the vector fields on your manifold. These are derivations of the algebra of C infinity functions or your manifold, together with the locality property. And you suppose you have an affine connection on your manifold. That means that you have a covariant derivative operator. You can take this as a definition. And it verifies two things. First of all, for any C infinity map F and any two vector fields x and y, nabla fx applied to y is equal to f nabla x of y. And the second rule is the Leibniz rule. Nabla x applied to fy. You have two terms. It's f nabla x of y plus x, the derivating f multiplied by y. And we found it very convenient to flip the triangle around. I mean, nabla xy, we denote it by x triangle y with this triangle pointing to the right. And of course, you know that you have a natural Lie bracket on Km, the vector fields, because there are derivations, and the Lie bracket of two derivations is always a derivation. And so I denote it by very, very fat brackets like this, because we will have other Lie brackets afterwards. Gavrilov calls this kind of thing a framed Lie algebra. That means that you have a Lie bracket, you have a triangle. That means a kind of purely magmatic law, and nothing else. I mean, you have, of course, antisymmetry and Jacobi for the Lie bracket, but nothing for the triangle, and no compatibility between the triangle and the bracket. Okay, so now it's very well known. You can define the torsion. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can define the torsion like this, and the curvature, which takes three terms and gives you one. And the curvature is defined by this sum of three terms: x triangle y triangle z minus y triangle x triangle z minus the bracket xy triangle z. Okay. It's an easy exercise to show that the torsion is linear, C infinity of m linear with respect to both arguments. And the curvature is C infinity of m linear with respect to the three arguments. And, I just mentioned what is called special polynomials. I won't speak very much about them, but you can compose the torsion and the curvature in various ways, in an operatic way, if you want. You can differentiate the curvature and the torsion and get other operators. And if you combine all this, you obtain a quite large class of what are called special polynomials. Okay, so now I go to two fundamental examples. First of all, suppose your connection is flat and torsion-free. Then you have the left Preely identity. So we saw yesterday in Frederick Stokes right Preely algebras with triangles pointing to the left. So for left Preely algebras, the triangles point to the right. So once again, the Preely identity, that means that the associator doesn't vanish. It's just a weak form of associativity. The associator doesn't vanish, but it is symmetric with respect to the two first arguments. Okay, so the notion of Prelli algebra has a long history. It has been discovered independently by Winberg and Gerstenhaber in '63. But we can go back to Arthur Cayley in 1857. And of course, the word Prelli is not here. But Arthur Cayley studies vector fields on flat spaces and relates these vector fields to rooted trees. And now it's perfectly understood in modern terms, in terms of Prelli algebras. So by the way, in 1857, Sophus Lee was 15 years old, right? So the term Prelli is not so bad. Okay. So for now, okay, the rooted trees enter in the picture precisely here now, because this is an important result by Frédéric Chapoton and Muriel Livernay, and independently by Askar Djoumadil-Dayev and Klaas Löf-Wal. The free Prelli algebra is the linear span of rooted trees together with the so-called grafting product. So what do? You have a first tree, a second tree. You graft your first tree on any vertex of the second tree and you sum up. So here is an example. Sorry, this southeast arrow should be a triangle. So here, tree S is the two vertex ladder. The tree T is a three vertex ladder. And you graft the root of the first tree on the second tree everywhere you can. And you have a sum of three terms. Okay. So now I switch to the next case, which is the flat constant torsion case. So we suppose once again that the curvature vanishes, and we suppose a constant torsion condition. That means that, sorry, yeah. Here is the constant torsion condition. So you can derive the torsion itself with respect to a vector field, and you apply a kind of Leibniz rule here. Okay? This is the definition, and you want this to be 0. Okay? And now there's a terminology called post-Lie. This word was coined by Bruno Valette in 2007. Yeah, and for even for for very Norwegian reasons, the terminology post-Lie is also not bad. Okay, so you have in this case Chi-M with the triangle and Jacobi bracket is a post-Lie algebra. So I'll say in a minute what is a post-Lie algebra. But the notion itself has been discovered and defined by Bruno Valette for completely different things. He was studying partition posets. But independently, Hans Müntefos and Will Wright defined what is a D-algebra. A D-algebra is, roughly speaking, well, that's not exactly true, but roughly speaking, a D-algebra is the enveloping algebra of a post-Lie algebra, right? And they proved that the universal enveloping algebra of the Lie algebra of vector fields, together with a natural extension of the triangle, is a D-algebra. Okay, so now what is a post-Lie algebra? So you have a vector space with a triangle and a bracket, and you ask for two compatibility conditions. first of all, you ask for this Leibniz rule here, which is quite natural. And the second axiom, maybe it's more interesting, you figure out what is x bracket y triangle Z. And it is this, it is supposed to be this expression. So it looks a bit complicated, but look at the particular case when the bracket vanishes. Then you recover the notion of a pre-Lie algebra, because the right-hand side of this second post-Lie axiom is exactly the pre-Lie, the left pre-Lie identity. So here it's not zero, but it is this left-hand side here. Okay, and the free post-Lie algebra is also well known. It is now the linear span of formal iterated Lie bracket of planar rooted trees with left grafting product. So the formula looks exactly like the previous one. You will say to me, okay, you copy-paste the figure here. What is the difference? Well, the difference is that now my trees are planar. That means that, for example, this term here, you have a long branch on the left and a short branch on the right. And then it is important that the long branch is on the left. And as a consequence, this law here is not pre-Lie anymore. It's purely magmatic. And then you extend this southeast row from the trees to the formal bracket of trees by forcing the two post-Lie axioms. Okay. Now, a take-home message before I continue. Now, for a couple of years, we wondered about the following. Okay, flat torsion-free is pre-Lie, flat constant torsion is post-Lie. So what about manifold with a connection with curvature and torsion? Which kind of algebraic structure would describe this? Of course, it's not pre-Lie, it's not post-Lie. But we discovered that the post-Lie formalism is still relevant for any connection. So, of course, you will need an auxiliary post-Lie algebra, and that's what I try to explain right now. So, G tilde. G tilde, it's the free R Lie algebra over the vector space of vector fields. And you can mod out and go to the free Lie algebra over the ring C infinity of M. So it's a module of sections of a big vector bundle, which is the free Lie algebra vector bundle. So it's infinite dimensional, for example. Okay, and then you can extend the triangle from the vector fields to G or G tilde by forcing the post-Lie axioms. So be careful, now we have two Lie brackets, one internal Lie bracket, which is the Jacobi Lie brackets of vector fields, and we have a kind of formal external Lie bracket living up there on G tilde or G, right? Okay. So these two guys are post-Lie algebras. We want a grading. For the Lie bracket, it's easy. For the triangle, okay, you have to extend the scalars to the polynomial without constant terms, so that you get positively graded post-Lie algebras. Okay, that's a technical algebraic detail. Okay, two Lie brackets are not enough. We need a third one, which is the Grossman-Larson bracket. It's defined like this. Okay, and it's a funny exercise to prove that in any post-Lie algebra, this Grossman-Larson bracket is indeed a Lie bracket. That means that you have a Jacobi identity. But this Grossman-Larson bracket is not bilinear with respect to C-infinity maps, contrarily to the first one. Okay, and now we can revisit the notions of torsion and curvature. And up to our knowledge, this was not known, but you can express the torsion in terms of the three Lie brackets like this, which is quite funny. And about the curvature, you can express it like this. So the curvature of three elements x, y, and z, it is something triangle z. And this something, we call them curvature elements. And that's quite convenient. Okay, now I come to an interesting notion, which is the Postli-Magnus expansion. So we saw a particular example of this in Frederick's talk yesterday. So you start from your Postli algebra G, you complete it with respect to the grading, okay? And then you can use two different exponentials. The exponential with respect to the product in the enveloping algebra, and the exponential with respect to the Grossman-Larson product in the same enveloping algebra. Or I should say in the completed enveloping algebra, right? And then composing both that way, you get what is called the Postli-Magnus expansion, chi. And of course, you can define the inverse. I have written for you the first terms of both. So chi of x is equal to x plus some corrective terms involving both the triangle and the bracket. And here is the inverse. And suppose, once again, that your Lie bracket vanishes, and then you recover exactly the omega in Frederick's talk, Pre-Lie-Magnus expansion. And here it's, if you suppose the bracket vanishes, you recognize the Pre-Lie exponential. Okay, so now we have two commuting diagrams. I'll spend a few minutes on them. Yeah, so here you have your two Postli algebras, G tilde and G, together with their corresponding Grossman-Larson bracket. You have a natural projection here. Here you have Gavrilov's K-map. Here you have a natural projection. And here, this rho is called the higher order covariant derivative map. And you can extend this to the enveloping algebras. And here you get the tensor algebra over V. There you get the tensor algebra over V, but with respect to the ring C-infinity of M with the natural projection. Here you have the Gavrilov's K-map. There. And then this projection here declines into two parts. First of all, the projection onto the universal enveloping algebra of V, and then down to the differential operators on your manifold. And this is an interesting fact that this Gavrilov K-map is an algebra morphism. It transforms Grossman-Larson into the dot product. Because that's an important remark to be done here. If you look at a Postli algebra, you have two Lie brackets, the original Lie bracket and Grossman-Larson. In general, there's absolutely no reason that these two Lie algebras are isomorphic. For example, in Frederick's talk, this Lie algebra is abelian, this one is not. But here, in the free, roughly speaking, we are in the free Postli case, and there, these two brackets are isomorphic. And the isomorphism is precisely given by Gavrilov's K-map. Right?
Dominique?
Yeah.
Did Gavrilov already think about this, or why did he introduce the K-maps?
Okay, Gavrilov sticks to the framed Lie algebra case. And he developed a very interesting algebraic machinery. Okay, I should have said that from scratch. Our input was just to reinterpret what Gavrilov did, but with the Postli algebra formalism, which I think it brings something new and interesting, but the merit of looking at algebraic structures for any connections, that's really the work by Gavrilov. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now I'll slowly approach the end of my talk, but I must spend a couple of minutes on this diagram. This is Gavrilov's double exponential. So our object of interest is this map Q star, and the formula looks horrible. So I'll try to disentangle a little bit this weird formula, and we'll try to understand what happens here. Okay. So suppose you are on your manifold. You start from a first point, call it x. Okay. You have a connection on your manifold, right? So first of all, at this particular point x, you choose two directions, v and w. So I put a formal parameter t in front of v and a formal parameter s in front of w. Okay, this small t should not be confused with the torsion. I guess there's no confusion here. Okay, and now I say, okay, I will follow the direction v or tv during 1 second. Okay, and I'll follow a geodesic for the connection. Okay, and then I end up at a second point, let's call it y. Okay, then I'll follow the direction w, starting from y, ending in a third point z. Okay, so now you should say to me you are cheating, and you would be right, because how can I follow the direction small w starting from a point which is not x? It's not possible. But yes, it is, because you use parallel transport. I mean, you look at this tangent vector, SW, and you parallel transport it along this geodesic here, and S small w becomes S big W. Okay? And this is that direction that I follow, following this geodesic. And then I end up in point small z. Okay? And then I say, okay, there should exist a third direction here so that I can reach the point z in one shot. That's my Q star of TV and SW. Okay. So now you see some betas, some lambda. So what are they? So I first give you a heuristic approach, and then I will switch to more rigorous formulas. So, okay, you start with a direction TV, okay? But now you have your connection and you have your geodesics. And you can say, okay, at least in a neighborhood of my point x, maybe suppose your neighborhood is big enough to encompass these 3 points. So from x, you can, from this direction, you can make a vector field by just parallel transporting this direction along any geodesic starting from x, okay? So now, from TV, you have a vector field. I call it beta of TV, right? So this is a vector field. Now, I do the same here on y. So I have beta of SW. And this big W, you can write it like lambda of TV and W. So I'll detail a little bit what is lambda afterwards, right? And then you say, okay, I'm following 2 flows, one flow and then another flow. And then if I compose the flows, I get the Baker-Campbell-Hausdorff formula telling me what is the vector field I have to follow. Okay, but then this is my vector field I have to follow, and then beta inverse, whatever it is, okay. Beta inverse gives you the direction Q star here, right? So, okay, it's a bit waving hand explanation. The very important fact proved in Gavrilov's paper is that it is what is called a tensorial quantity. That means that the evaluation Q star of TV and SW at point X only depends on V and X and W of X. So I make a slight jump here. Now, actually, V and W will be vector fields already, okay? And then, okay, if they are vector fields, you look at their evaluation at point X. So you get your two directions. And then the very important fact is that the final result depends only on the evaluations precisely at point X, not around. Okay, so now, yeah?
T and S, do you have any, must they be small?
For us, it's just, there are just two indeterminates.
But you must be in a normal neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I could have said either you consider S and T as indeterminates, and then your neighborhood becomes just formal, you don't care. Or you say, okay, I have to take S and T sufficient reals, but sufficiently small so that you stick into your geodesic normal neighborhood. Yeah, that's right.
But this is a formal computation, right?
Yes, it is formal. Yeah, completely. Okay, so yeah, this diagram is purely formal. I mean, you are living into completions of various vector spaces or Lie algebras and so on. So this is one of our first results. So the beta map, I just explained to you heuristically what it was. But the beta map, at least, you can give it a meaning from the completion of the vector fields onto the completion of the vector fields. So the completion, okay, what is this bar here? I said you have to extend the scalar to the polynomial without constant terms, and then putting the bar, that means that you extend to the formal series without constant terms. So taking a formal series without constant terms, that means formally taking a very small number. Okay. Okay. So beta, you obtain it by jumping into the diagram, either that way or that way. Okay. So you remember this northeast part of the diagram, and then you can complete with the two Postli-Magnus expansions there. You have a natural injection of the vector fields into the Postli algebra. And then you have beta map here, expressed into two different ways. A second result is a very nice identity. So here it is. So it's always purely formal, small t and small s. Yeah, small t is an indeterminate here. And we have this expression here. So let me start by the right-hand side to explain what it is. Delta V is the unique derivation of the free magmatic algebra generated by V and W, such that delta V of V is equal to V triangle V, and delta V and W is equal to V triangle W. If you want to know what is the derivation on your magmatic algebra, you just have to know it on the generators. That's what I do, and then I extend. And then I look at e to the minus t delta V applied to W. And then you find V, W, minus delta V applied to W, that means minus TV triangle W, and then plus T squared over 2, delta V squared applied to W. And if you apply delta V 2 times, you have to distribute, so it becomes more complicated and you get this kind of terms. And of course, if you continue, the expressions becomes more complicated. It's a kind of natural growth operator, if you like. Okay, so much for the right-hand side. And this should be understood as the formal definition of the parallel transport, right? So you parallel transport your W along the geodesic indicated by V. That's what you get. And now what about the left-hand side? Now you use the Grossman-Larson product and you use the Postli-Magnus expansion. In other words, the right-hand side is a purely magmatic concept, a purely magmatic quantity, and the left-hand side is its Postli interpretation. Okay, and finally, we get a simpler expression for the double exponential. It is simpler than Gavrilov's expression. So here you use the Postli-Magnus expansion, the higher order covariant derivative maps. You have to use the inverse beta map, so that's not so easy, but you cannot cope with it. And Z dot is a Baker-Campbell-Hausdorff expansion with respect to the original Postli bracket. So here we go. And with this, we were able to give a simpler proof of the fact that this Q star is purely tensorial.
What?
I meant. Okay, sorry. I repeat. I mentioned maybe 5 minutes ago that this quantity Q star is purely tensorial. I mean the evaluation at point x depends only on the value of V and W at point x. So using an avatar of this simpler expression, we were able to give another proof of this fact. The original proof is in one of Gavrilov's paper. Okay, okay, that's it. So I have some references, and our input in this is in this archive reference here. And I point the 3 papers by Gavrilov we mostly worked on. Thank you very much.